we have plenty still to come. We're going to get into our GAA predictions in, I think, right now in just a second. And find out exactly how all that's going. Will had been very much out in front over the last number of weeks. He got an early lead. He's like your man who sort of gets going in the Tour de France very early. And I think that both lads are, Eoin and Will, you're there. You got to get going early on. We can get a sense there. Will, who's on his victory parade already out and about around Dublin City Centre by the looks of things. You're storming ahead in the lead, Will. You're not to be caught.
No, look, we're running out of games at this stage, Adrian. That's probably the one saving grace. I'm in Tullamore train station currently, about to catch the Galway to Dublin train in about 4 minutes' time. So for the sake of our conversation, hopefully the train is a couple of minutes late. This will be the one day it'll probably be early. But last weekend wasn't a bad one. Tommy got all the spoils in terms of being the only person to predict that Clare would win that game against Wexford. So I've been stung twice by Wexford now, having backed them to beat Galway too. And this week, not to give too much of a spoiler, I'm going to totally flip my argument and go for Clare this weekend. So just kind of hoping to keep that slight lead at the top at the moment.
You have the 3-game lead at the moment. You are on 28 correct predictions, 5 incorrect predictions. I'm on 25 and 8. And down at the bottom, it is a battle between Adrian and Tommy. They both got 24 correct calls so far and 9 incorrect ones. It was a better week, a slightly better week for Tommy last week. He got 7 to Adrian's 6 in terms of correct calls. Let's have a look at how things are going this week. We'll start with the hurling, and Clare against Waterford is one of the 2 games that we're looking at this weekend. Everybody is going for Clare in this game except for Adrian. Why have you picked Waterford?
I would say, by the way, I doubled down in Galway last week, and I'd vote for a wayward Joe Canning sideline and that Shane Walsh sideline that got sent back. I'd be nudging Will out of the way there now. But as similar sort of a logic here, right? I'm going for Waterford to beat Clare. Very straight up logic, I'm not going to lie. Waterford gave Limerick a proper run of it, obviously, last weekend. Talk of Limerick being that team of a generation, and they've run them to within 4 points. Beaten Cork. So they're building, and I think that Clare had that, let's not forget that Clare had a 1-point win over Laois not that long back. They beat a Wexford team who'd been given a thumping by Galway in the Leinster final, and I know the Tony Kelly factor, you can throw that back in my face, and it's totally legitimate caveat there, but Tommy keeps mentioning guaranteed all-star players, right, and saying that, watch out for these lads this weekend. So I'm going to say, for this Waterford-Clare game, Waterford to win, and by the way, a couple of names that you haven't heard of, so keep an eye out for them. I think they're going to score big this weekend. Stephen Bennett is one, and a fella called Austin Gleeson is the other. You heard it here first.
Tell us why Galway are going to be tipped.
Mainly based on having gone for Galway last weekend and feeling that I really need to go double or quits on them on. And I think that they all know that they should have won last weekend. I think it's going to drive them on. And I think that, I'm doubling down in Galway, and that's my logic.
Will O'Callaghan, I fully expect the train to come and interrupt this, but there is strength in numbers here. Myself, yourself and Tommy are all backing Clare, and we're all backing Tipperary. Why are we going to be right?
Well, for Tipperary, I think I wasn't impressed with them in terms of how they played against Limerick the first day on, but last week was a lot back towards what we saw from them last year. They switched the 15 around a little bit. Bonner Maher, Dan McCormick coming into the team, an improved work rate, including, I think many people probably saw the hook from Seamus Callanan. I think hopefully we get a game somewhere of the vintage of the last 5 years between these two teams. We'd love a game on par with the 2017 semi-final when Joe Canning scored the wonder point over his shoulder from the sideline. I just think this time round, Tipperary are going to take on a Galway team who've been very impressive in their first 2 games. Can't take away from Adrian's argument at all there. They really should be Leinster champions. But I think a chink in the armour that we saw last week was the Galway full back line and their goalkeeper. Really and truly, they should have dealt with that goal scored by Richie Hogan. We give all the credit to Hogan for juggling the ball and scoring, but that should have been cleared at least twice. Yeah. They struggled a bit when Kilkenny got direct ball into the full forward line. Tipperary still have the best full forward line in hurling, and I think they're going to get a little bit of change from this week. That's the reason I think the Tipperary are going to win. Clare, I think it's difficult for Waterford emotionally coming off the back of a final defeat last week. They hurled really well for pretty much the entire game against Limerick and pushed Limerick absolutely to their collar last weekend. But it often proves to be difficult for a team to turn around 7 days after a provincial final defeat and then win their game, in this case, a quarter-final. And Clare have been building a little bit from the last few weeks. That was a really impressive win last weekend. I know so much relies on Tony Kelly if they're going to win, but they get their captain, David McInerney, back for this weekend. They've got a good recent record against Waterford. I think Clare are going to edge it on Sunday.
It could be game over. It could be relegation for you, Adrian, before we even get into the football this weekend. But to take us to the football... Let us hear from Tommy Rooney, who is in absentia, but he left this very kind video message.
Hi lads, apologies I couldn't be with you live this Friday morning, but thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to get my quick picks across. While I may be bottom of the predictions table, I take great pride in the fact that I've made some of the best calls over the last couple of weeks. That ain't going to change this week. I'm chasing, so I've got to make a couple of big calls. So I'm going for Clare in the hurling. I've backed them all throughout this championship. I think they're going to get the job done once more against Waterford. I think, sticking with the hurling, that Tipperary are going to beat Galway. I've got the jersey on. And I think in the football, I think it's going to be a Tipperary double. I think that the Tipperary footballers are going to smash Owen Sheehan's power rankings algorithm to pieces. Cork somehow are the fourth best team in the country on that list. Can't be true. Tipper 13th. They've got Michael Quinlivan, they've got Conor Sweeney, they've got Colin O'Riordan, they've got enough firepower to destroy the odds and the power rankings this weekend and win the Munster final. Up in Ulster, I've backed against Cavan time and time again this year, so am I possibly going to make the same mistake again? I'm back in Donegal. That may be no surprise to any of you. And then in the football, which may be a surprising decision considering all the talk I've done this year, I am sticking with Meath. I can't back out of it now. I've spent 18 months trying to convince you of the progression that they've made. I genuinely think that last year's Leinster final was a freak. I think we're going to get a couple of goals this year. We're going to get them early. We're going to turn the Dubs over like we did in the league, and we're going to make the most of it. We're going to take our chances, and we're going to win the Leinster final for the first time since 2010, I think. Yeah, can't remember. Anyways, the Dubs are being beaten this weekend. Best of luck.
Tommy Rooney, it has to be said, on is Donald Trump. He's coming on here telling us that he's made some of the best calls over the last number of weeks. Yet he is, alongside myself, admittedly, bottom of the leaderboard. This is Trumpism in its extreme, I suggest.
Before we lose you on your very, very good train Wi-Fi, no doubt, Will, why is Tommy making the most ridiculous prediction of all time here in Meath potentially winning the Leinster final?
Pure pride, Owen. At this stage, he's hoping that his own county can do him a massive favour. Look, Meath have scored, 12 goals in the 2 games on the run to the provincial final. And at times last week, Lee should have probably had a goal early on from Evan O'Carroll. Didn't take their chances, played well for the first 20 minutes or so. And then after that, the Dublin juggernaut just kicked in. You could argue that Dublin might be a little bit undercooked coming into the final, given that they breezed past Westmeath and Laois in the 2 games that they've played so far, winning both games by double digits. But it's very difficult to see, as Anthony Moyles was saying yesterday, a combination of bravery and also kind of doggedness from Meath to be able to get over Dublin. We haven't seen Meath get to that level yet. They've had a pretty okay run to the final, but unless they score a ton of goals tomorrow night at Croke Park, I can't see them absolutely hedging with his heart on this one.
Well, gentlemen, thanks a million. Just as the connection is dropping there, we get your final predictions there. You'll have seen them on screen anyway. Will O'Callaghan going for a Dublin win, as are myself and Adrian. He's also going for a Donegal win, which we all are. And he's going for a Cork win, which myself and Adrian are. Are you concerned, though, Adrian, about Tip and about Tommy potentially catching you with that Tipperary prediction?
Tommy's stuff is such crazy talk. I made some of the best predictions over the last number of weeks, he says, right? And then predicts Meath to beat Dublin. And you know, the most worrying thing about her own is that he probably believes that there's a chance that they will. I don't think any right-thinking person is of that view at all. But am I worried about the Tip thing? Do you know, when I made the prediction earlier in the week, I was very confident about it. But having listened to Louise Galvin a bit earlier on today, and the few little grains of rice on that we like to speak about in this show, I think there are suddenly a bunch of reasons that Tip might get it done. What do you think?
Well, I said it a couple of weeks ago. I said that there's something telling me that it won't be a Mayo versus Cork All-Ireland semi-final. Now, I did predict Mayo to win last week, and I'm predicting Cork to win this week, so I'm a complete and utter hypocrite. That's the first thing you can take away from that. But there is just something maybe about the Cork win a couple of weeks ago where it just sort of feels like that there is a banana skin coming. What I will say is that Cork are very fortunate that it wasn't a 1 week turnaround. I think coming off that Kerry win, the unbelievable exertion that would have taken out of the team in a 1 week turnaround would have been very, very tough. And also the energy that it would have taken mentally to actually get back up for a game for a Munster final the following week would have been a very big challenge for them. But they've had 2 weeks, and I think that could be the key in the end. I don't think it's going to be a blowout whatsoever. The game in 2016 was a classic. It was an absolutely brilliant game. Nobody remembers it because it was Tip versus Cork in a Munster semi-final, I think it was, and it seemed to have gone under the radar at that point of the year. But let's not forget that after Tip got over the line in that particular game, they did end up going all the way to the All-Ireland semi-final. So this wasn't a fluke. This is a Tip team that had been building and it seemed had been dismantled. But for 1 year only, you've got these Tip pieces back together. And it just so happens to be the centenary of Bloody Sunday. It just so happens that there is no back door. There won't be a way for Cork to come back around or Kerry to come back around and beat them eventually. There are just a few of these stars aligning for Tipperary this year. 1935, the last time they've beaten won a Munster Championship. And I just feel that there's going to be a bit of history this year. But that sometimes I feel is nonsense talk. And if you look at it empirically, Cork still have the better players. And sometimes football matches just come down to the better players, and that could be it. So I'm sticking with Cork, but just about Adrian. I think Louise did make a very convincing case earlier in the show as well. So just to recap those predictions, the edgy predictions this week's probably the quicker way to do it. Tommy is picking Tip to beat Cork. Tommy is picking Meath to beat Dublin. Adrian is picking Waterford to beat Clare, and Adrian is picking Galway to beat Tip. So there you have it. Everybody's picking
those two the two hurling predictions that I've made that's gone against both of you, or all of you. You'd have to accept that there's a possibility that they happen, right? Like in a way that Dublin are going to thump Meath, and like I know we could all look like fools on Monday morning in relation to Tipperary, and that's the one that I'd slightly be 50-50 on, but there's every chance that those two come off for me, and suddenly that table is a very different look about it come Monday.
For sure. But best of luck with it all.
Yeah, we're going to need all that. A couple of comments in. Tipperary are a good football side, so they might something, I presume, win. And the centenary jersey will motivate them, says Kevin Cronin on YouTube. And James Carew says, Will live on the train, a hero. You love to see it. You definitely do. And Cavan Lad on YouTube says, the pressure's on Donegal to turn up and play well enough to beat us. He says, yarring his way into an Ulster football final.